This is not psychotherapy. Dr. Wills does not have a provider-patient relationship with this guest. These are just two people talking about emotions.
Welcome to Give a Actually, with your host, Dr. Alex Wills.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Alex Wills here with Dr. Brooke Schneider. How are you doing today, Brooke?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Brooke Schneider is my friend and colleague. We went to Hawaii together in our residency training program for psychiatry. And before I get to her bio, I just have to say, to know Brooke is to love Brooke. She's just one of those really super special people. Ever since my wife and I met her, we just fell in love with her, and she's just been an awesome friend to have, even though she's all the way in Colorado and I'm all the way up here in Idaho.
Thank you so much. Such sweet words, and ditto right back at you, your whole family. And I was so lucky to bond so much with your two oldest kids when we were in Hawaii. They hold such a special place in my heart.
And fun fact about Brooke, she's also very talented with dance choreography. We had the dance troupe Pink Floyd, which was classic and will go down in history as the coolest thing ever.
And you recently sent me some videos of one of our performances. It made me so happy and reminded me of that fun, playful, spunky side of myself that I really need to tap into more nowadays. When I saw those videos, I was like, why am I not in hip hop class with my daughter? What is going on?
I can tend to naturally become a bit of a serious person, and people like Brooke can bring me out of my shell and help me to have that childlike fun and joy. So she's so great to be around.
Oh, thank you so much. You are brightening my day. You have no idea.
So everybody, this is about Brooke. Dr. Brooke Schneider is a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist practicing integrative psychiatry in Fort Collins, Colorado. Dr. Brooke is the co-creator of WomenStrong, an online women's wellness program that provides education, empowerment, and connection for women along the health journey. She is the co-author of WomenStrong, an Amazon #1 new release ebook, and the host of WomenStrong podcast that is featured within the Mental Health News Radio Network. Dr. Brooke also co-hosts the International Sand, Surf, and Soul Wellness Retreat. Outside of work, Dr. Brooke enjoys snowboarding, skiing, hiking, paddleboarding, relaxing, and laughing with friends and family, as well as mothering her joyful, strong, and spunky daughter. Anything else you wanted to add? And just off the top, if people wanted to follow you or connect with your WomenStrong stuff, where's like the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so you can go to our website that has everything, all of our links. That's WomenStrongTogether.com. And we're on Instagram and Facebook at WomenStrong Together. And the ebook is on Amazon, and the link is on our website. And the ebook is really cool if you just want an introduction to the WomenStrong program. It's based on our curriculum, and it's really like a workbook. Each chapter has we call them daily challenges, has a task to do to create new healthy habits based on our foundations for health, which I could get into if you want to learn more about that. But yeah, WomenStrong I started it with Dr. Nicole Lewis, one of my colleagues and friends. We worked together at an integrative mental health clinic in Colorado, and we were seeing lots of women. And we ourselves were working moms and, struggling with that work-life balance and struggling to keep our own healthy habits going as we were taking care of everybody else and giving it all away, as women and moms tend to do. And we were, seeing women individually and noticing that we were all struggling with similar things, similar challenges. And we were sort of like a broken record, as I'm sure as a psychiatrist you experience sometimes. And I know with your book, you're trying to spread the message there too and reach more people with tools to feel better. So Dr. Nicole and I said, hey, we've got to get these women together so they can support one another. And let's write out all of our lessons that we're giving to people individually. And we can get groups of women together to support one another along the health journey as they learn all of these things. And so our Foundations of Health covers nutrition, physical health, self-care, movement, stress management, and mental health. And then we have at the core is mindset work, which I know is sort of what you're doing with Give an F, actually, is how do we sort of break these patterns and embrace all of the good, the bad, the ugly, all of these strong feelings that and thought patterns that keep us stuck. So we do mindset work and create really clear goals and intentions. And then when we fall off and get stuck, we lift each other back up and get recentered on our big why we want to be healthy and what we want to contribute to the world. So that's WomenStrong in a nutshell.
Yeah, check out WomenStrong. It's really good stuff. And she's been reaching out to us in Idaho with some of it too for some of our providers here. They're very interested. What emotions would you say women struggle with most from your experience with WomenStrong? What are those so-called negative emotions or emotions that seem to be painful, difficult?
Yeah, great question. And I can also speak from the clinic because the majority of my practice is kids and teens and women. And I would say the whole notion of not good enough, like confidence. And, you know, I do see people along the lifespan, right? And as you know, too, with our training in child and adolescent psychiatry, you can sort of go back and see those times, you know, even for your listeners, you know, remember when you were a kid and you raised your hand in class and you thought you knew the answer and, oh, I got it. The answer's 5 and the answer was actually 4 and you were so embarrassed and you felt like, oh, I'm no good, I'm an idiot, whatever kid language you had, right? And then fast forward to adolescence and you got broken up with and, oh, I'm no good and I'm not good enough. And, you know, women tend to be empaths and we feel things very deeply, not to generalize or leave anyone out. Men also can feel very deeply, but I think culturally, you know, it's sort of weeded out of them more, like, unfortunately, as you know, and work with people on. But yeah, so I think women, you know, do tap into these painful emotions and sometimes can turn it into stories that impact their lives, you know? So I think, you know, clinically with women, and you know this, in the clinic, it's usually anxiety and depression. But if you get even to like core automatic negative thoughts, like what's underneath, I think what gets people stuck and maybe not putting their oxygen mask on first or not believing that they can be healthy is that sort of core belief of I'm no good or I'm not good enough or I'm not worth it at whatever flavor of it.
Right. And I don't think my wife, Aya, would mind at all if I shared that's what she struggles with. She's trying to be helicopter mom to now 5 kids, and she gets down a lot. And she's just constantly thinking of all the ways that she's failing not to be the best mom for each one of them at every moment in the day. And in our relationship too, that comes out because sometimes that'll get projected. And I will also sort of identify with, I'm not good enough. I'm not supporting enough. I'm not doing my role enough. And then it's a very, very painful story to get caught into. And the emotions that I've noticed, just despair and sadness and disappointment, frustration. Any other pure raw emotions that come up for you, Brooke, that you can think about or women have told you?
Well, like I was just telling you before we pressed record, shame, you know, and self-love, like I was telling Alex, for those of you who weren't in on the pre-party, he asked how I was, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm all over the place. My mom was in town for a week, so I'm just getting back to catching up on things, and I'm just seeing all the balls that I dropped, and I'm hating myself. I'm feeling ashamed, like I want to hide. And I don't want to tell my husband some of the major balls I dropped that could be trouble. And you bring up two really important points. One is being a mother, and it's the hardest job in the world, most rewarding, but like the hardest job in the world. And you're going to mess up 50,000 times a day. And I just heard a statistic today on something about, I'm going to butcher it, but it was something about misaligning with your kids. Like if you align with them too much, it's detrimental. And if you misalign with them, you want to misalign with them 70% of the time and you're winning or something like that.
Right.
But there's this whole thing of like, and being a dad too, and with 5 kids, oh my gosh, I always joke, I can barely handle one. And I'm a child psychiatrist. But it's the most challenging and rewarding job, but your stuff is always in your face. Your kids are going to trigger all of your things. And if perfectionism, which a lot of us women and men too struggle with, is your thing, well, guess what? As a parent, you're effed to use your language. You're totally effed because you're going to be imperfect all the time and your kids are going to show you that. So that was the one point. Parenting, it's just impossible. And the whole notion of good enough parenting. That's what I tell my moms all the time, like warm body, soft place to land, love the heck out of them. You're winning. You're doing a great job.
And for any anxious, sorry, go ahead.
No. You can go ahead.
I was just going to say, for any anxious parents out there, in child psychiatry, 2 saving graces that have really spoke a lot to me and for the patients I see and the parents is, one is the good enough mother, the good enough parent. You don't have to be perfect. Really, if you can keep your kid fed, safe, not abused, nothing horrific, kids are very resilient, which is the second truth. We don't have to be perfect, and adversity is often good for them. So there's so many scientific, psychological reasons not to beat yourself up. However, we do want to hone in, especially for the purposes of this show, on those painful emotions. So we'll get into, Brooke mentioned 2, which are just very powerful, painful emotions, hate and shame. And so we'll talk about that in a moment. But was there any other thoughts you had on that, Brooke?
Yeah, well, the second thing you brought up so beautifully is the entanglement with a spouse, a partner, and with the parenting. And everybody has their own baggage and their own way that they were raised. And then you bring that in and try to parent these gorgeous, adorable, challenging little humans from these 2 different, parenting styles and approaches and ways that you think is right or wrong. I mean, it's just impossible. And so, when we feel like we're failing, we might react to it differently. Some of us hide, some of us, want to fix everything and get in there, but most of us feel the weight of the world on our shoulders when it comes to our kids. And so we take it on alone. And another thing we were talking about before we pressed record was asking for help. And I think, as women, when it comes to the children and the house and everything, we feel like we need to bear the weight on our own, or maybe we're not doing a good enough job. So the spouse, but what if we, the whole thing with family therapy is being a united front and being a team. And how do we, get through our prickliness so that we can reconnect together and be the strong force for the whole family. So that is so challenging in and of itself.
By the way, Brooke and I are hypothetically talking about planning to do a retreat where we will talk about women's issues, men's issues, radical emotional acceptance, not giving an F, giving an F, and men's issues, relationship issues, all of the above, parenting stuff. So if you guys have any interest in that, you can contact us, radicalemotionalacceptance.com, or just somehow reach out to either of us and let us know your interest so that we can think more about doing that sometime soon.
Yeah, can't wait for that. So different than the Sand, Surf, and Soul retreat where we were like creating our wellness plans and it was mostly women and this is going to be so awesome.
Awesome. So you said 2 really, really fascinating, painful, difficult emotions, shame and hate. These are so tricky, because a problem I noticed that I've done, and most of my patients, most everybody I know does, when you have the emotion of shame or hate, that somehow becomes evidence that your story is true, that whatever toxic belief about yourself, for example, I'm not a good enough mother, I'm not a good enough father, and well, there's this emotion of shame, and that's icing on the cake to just really drive it home. So when we look at these emotions with curiosity and we ask a question, wait a minute, what if these emotions, although hot fireball, painful emotions, obviously, what if they're actually good? What if they're actually trying to do something good for us? So I'm curious what your thoughts are, Brooke, just kind of off the top of your head. Why do we humans have emotions of shame? How did they develop? What good are they? Why do we have emotions of hate? And, you know, that gets directed in different ways, but just that pure emotion of hate, why do we have them if they just make us feel shitty?
This is so hard because I do a lot of work on self-love and self-compassion. And I was a little bit nervous / dreading our talk today because I very quickly, and even just before I was talking, when I noticed that I dropped some balls and I was actually like, you know, I had 30 minutes before this interview and I was like, oh, can I take care of that? I don't know. And I literally slouched in my chair. Like it was physically in my body, the shame and the pain and the self-loathing and self-hatred. And I was like, oh, I can't do anything. Like that was the thought. Like I totally blew it. And then I very quickly said, well, I'll do it later. Be forgiving, be kind and gentle with yourself, and like went into the self-love, self-compassion thing. Yeah. But I think that what you're going to tell me is to stick with the pain. Yeah, spoiler alert. Stick with the pain a little longer. Maybe I could have gotten the thing done in a half hour if I had. No. But to answer your question, the painful emotions are, you know, there to tell us something, to signal, okay, pay attention. Okay, this is, and it's not the first time I dropped the ball and I'm hating myself, you know. 75,000th time. And, you know, and my humanness. So what I struggle with, I think, is sitting with the painful emotions and using them, you know, for the lesson. I very quickly go to like all my psychobabble. Like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just get sucked into our story so quickly. I like to point out, at least this is what's helpful for me to think about it, as the emotion of hate is just sort of a raw, pure emotion that we can have when somebody hurts us or something doesn't go our way, or when we make a mistake, or when we taste something that's just awful. You might have disgust or hate. I hate that. When we turn it into even the term, the word self-hate, self-hatred, that already just like latches on this toxic story of I'm feeling self-hate right now, which means I'm to blame. It's my fault. This is on me. I'm bad in some way. And that takes us away from just what I think of as the pure raw emotion and gets us into the story, which is not true. I don't believe that Brooke is a bad person or that she is to be loathed for who she is or whatever. However, I can relate to what she's talking about. When I am behind and I make a mistake, I'm not caught up on things, I have a strong sense of hate. And I find it helpful to say, I hate this so much. I hate this. I hate this situation. And to leave myself out of it. The hate is true. However, it's not my fault. I'm doing the best I can. I'm human. I make mistakes. I get behind. It wasn't my intention. And it's easier to have that self-love when we separate out the story that can sort of define a negative idea about who we are. I like to start in kind of a dispensational way by saying, you are already worthy. you are, since you were born, you were lovable, worthwhile, precious, infinitely valuable. And any story that you learn along the way during the indoctrination and socialization growing up that makes you question that is just a lie. And so it's a cognitive behavioral therapy to question these automatic thoughts or these false beliefs about who we are at our core beliefs or our core value. For you, Brooke, I'm wondering, with the hate, the self-hate, it sounds like it's easy to kind of get swept into that story. And what do you, when you notice that happening, because you're self-reflective, you're aware, what do you kind of tell yourself, or what steps do you take to kind of be curious about that?
Well, mostly I don't sit there and I go on to the next thing, which I did. I was like, oh, I have a half hour. I can get this email out, you know. But when I do sit there, it's a really deep, old conversation, like an old story from childhood of, you know, being no good. You suck. Okay. That's the repetitive thing that I say. You suck, you suck, you suck. Yeah. And so, and when I take it further, you know, that's when I think get to the part of like what you just said. I'm worthy. You know, I'm only human. You know, humans make mistakes, and I can forgive myself and I can love myself anyway. And we're also not all black and white. We're not all one thing. Parts work stuff.
And that's so true. Most of these emotional beliefs were formed in childhood, and it's very hard to break that habit because they're so like physically formed in our minds. We automatically have that emotion of hate or shame, and we go back to this belief of I'm not good enough, I suck, I'm never gonna be worthy, or whatever it might be. And you know, the emotion of shame has been fascinating for me as well. My personal take on it and my sort of epiphany was that when I realized that these emotions are not about us, but they're about our relationship to others, our relationship to a situation. I'm working on a new idea for a book called Shame is Good, and it explores how shame is actually very helpful. So when we have that intense emotion of shame, rather than saying, oh, I'm a fuck up, or I'm never going to get it right, or whatever we might tell ourselves, instead, if we are curious about it, we might wonder how this emotion's making me aware of how I'm relating to my tribe, to my husband, to the people around me, and my behavior is not in line, it's not congruent with who I want to be or who I think of myself as. And I want to change my behavior to get more in line with what's good for the tribe. I want people to trust me and to admire me or to relate to me in a way that is positive. And what I'm doing right now is not in line with that. And I think it does go back to kind of our tribal ancestry. If you didn't fit into your tribe, you were as good as dead. You're going to get eaten by lions, you're going to starve, or you're going to get killed by another tribe. So we have these very painful emotions to try to make us aware, like, hey, you're not in alignment with your tribe right now, so you better pay attention to that shit or you're dead. And it has nothing to do with who you are. Again, it's just about how you can decide to change or not change to affect the quality of your standing or your status with that person or that group. Any thoughts about that? Or
yeah, I love that, and I hear that, and I have heard that shame, you know, the initial shame incident, that it comes from someone else. Like the kids don't feel shame on their own. It's in relation to someone else, you know, making you feel ashamed or whatever. But then we carry it all through life and perpetuate it ourselves.
Yeah, that's kind of the worst. I was talking to someone about cults, and they were talking about how we become our own policeman. We become our own shamer. We become our own critic. We no longer need mom or dad or whoever it was when we were kids to shame us and to make us believe these lies about ourselves, because we're perfectly good at doing it ourselves. We're like our own worst enemy in that way, you know?
Yeah, that inner critic voice has a megaphone. Piece of shit. No, just kidding.
Yeah. I love in the Four Agreements, I think he refers to it as the parasite. And I really like, making it sort of separate from, oh, this isn't me. This critical voice, I don't have to listen to it. I don't have to identify with it, and get some space in that way, you know?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Good imagery of it. The nasty parasite, like over your face. You can't see anything else.
Yeah.
But that little separation. Oh, I can peek. I can see something now.
So, was there anything in particular that you felt comfortable going into today to share with us?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking I had told you that I was thinking of talking about divorce. It's also a very common thing that people experience. We know the statistics, over 50% of marriages end in divorce. And then for women as well, it's sort of one of the parts of the life cycle that can occur and that has come up in WomenStrong a lot. And so I myself am a divorcee. I was married once before. And I think, I even thought of it when we were having this conversation of shame and self-loathing, like even when I drop a ball like that, maybe it was because I had planned to talk about my divorce with you, but it was sort of right there too. Like, oh, yeah, you're no good. Like your first husband left you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sort of conversation. And what's interesting, when my first husband told me he wanted a divorce, and I knew logically in my head that it was a good thing. I had this intellectual knowing, because we had been struggling. And actually divorces, they don't just arise out of nowhere. So often when the people I work with or my friends tell me they're getting divorced, I usually say congratulations instead of I'm sorry, because of my own experience. And obviously I explained that, I went through a divorce, and I know that it's usually a good thing when it gets to that point. So, it's, even though it's the most painful thing ever, usually both parties, are going to eventually end up looking back and saying, oh yeah, phew, that, that marriage needed to end. So when my husband left me, I was feeling the pain, the sadness, the anger, and I had this knowing of, okay, yeah, this was a good thing that he left me. We weren't doing well at all, and probably we're going to have some problems long term. And then it was in medical school. I ended up moving home with my parents. I lived there for 3 months, and I would have these waves of like being in the fetal position, crying on the floor, over the pain of this, but still that knowing of like, this had to happen. This is good. But also like fear of the future. Like, am I ever going to love again? That was one of my fetal position on the floor sobbing. Anyway. And then what I also was going to say to you is fast forward, because I got divorced when I was 31 or 2 or something. And now I'm in another marriage. But 5 years ago, my parents got divorced after 43 years of marriage. And holy cow, like being an adult, it was people who have been adults and their parents get divorced will understand this. It is very sort of hard to balance that intellectual knowing that, okay, this needed to happen. I see both sides, because you're an adult, right? You're not a kid who's like, why did my parents get divorced? You're an adult and you see it and you're like, okay, that was a good thing for both of them. That had to happen. And I lost my family.
Yeah.
My family broke up.
Yeah.
And so, lots of pain there. And anyway, so that was sort of what I wanted to bring today, this balance of like these really painful experiences in life and sort of having a knowing an intellectual knowing that, okay, this is a good thing. And here are these really painful emotions right alongside.
Yeah. And thank you for being so courageous to be willing to discuss, because I think this is going to be so healing for so many people to see this side of you and this true, because where you're most powerful, in my opinion, is when you're the most real and you make people aware of those raw, intense emotions, you know. And in the same spirit with empathy, you say congratulations when someone's getting a divorce. I say it's so good that you have this intense pain and this fear, because you do. It's just true. You didn't wake up and choose to have it. It's the correct emotion to have with the correct intensity, because that's the emotion that you're having. And it's also reflective of how much you love your family and how much you loved your ex and how much you wanted things to be the way that we all want them to be, happily ever after, whatnot. So in that way, I'm just curious, and this podcast is really an experiment in real time to see how we can discover together how these painful emotions are actually somehow good for us, and what's kind of coming to you right now as you're like there with that.
Yeah, I am feeling that love that I have for each of my parents and for my ex-husband, and I'm thinking about how it could be so easy, and I do experience this, that like shutting down, even in like my own current marriage, and like, oh, we have a fight, we're getting divorced, like so easy to go there and to sort of shut down, but to really stay with the pain of loving deeply and losing can help you to love, to love deeply instead of shutting it down.
Yeah. Something that touched me is when you said that fear that I think we've all had. Am I ever going to love again? Right? Mm-hmm. And that's the flip side of every painful emotion, is a desire. When we have loneliness, when we have sadness, pain, it teaches us the desire for what is missing. If we're getting divorced, if we're losing somebody, we still very much desire to be with somebody. We desire that intimacy, that love, that companionship. If our family is going through turmoil or breaking up, we have this desire for family, for that support, that connection, that trust and everything. And these painful emotions make us painfully aware of what we're losing, and also can become an emotional compass to guide us towards, well, I still have these emotional needs, and if I can't get them met with this person or this relationship, or if my family is just not redeemable or whatever the case may be, how can I creatively still pursue? Because I still have these emotional needs, and how can I get them met in like a healthy way, a safe way, with people that I can trust to meet them,
Yeah. I think the knee-jerk reaction is to hide, or at least mine.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we've been taught in society too, is, well, there's a million ways to work through these emotions or fix them or avoid them or just numb out. We can just do drugs, man. Just like, fuck it. Like, I don't give a fuck, The reason actually that I even wrote this book and am doing this podcast is because of the emotion of loneliness. It was probably about 4 years ago that I woke up one day and I realized I am fucking lonely. I am like so painfully lonely, and it really hurts. And even though I'm surrounded with all these people and family, I realized that I wasn't having some of the relationship, connection, intimacy, companionship that I really longed after. And when I realized that, it sucked. And it just like, well, that sucks. And I can't really do anything about that. However, on the flip side of that loneliness, very painful loneliness, was my desire to connect. I wanted to spend more time talking with my friend Brooke, because Brooke really gets me like other people don't, but I don't get to hang out with her enough. I want to interact with other people that give a fuck about emotions too. Because I'm kind of weird in Idaho. Like a lot of people don't want to, rather just sit around and talk about football or something, right? So that became my quest towards my desire. Like I didn't know how to get these needs met, but I knew that I did have these emotional needs. And so it moved me and gave me energy, motivation to work towards creatively. How can I meet that need to engage with people that I really enjoy engaging with more, even though I'm stuck way up here in this isolated city, So
Yeah, that's so cool to even be aware. I mean, with the pandemic, we did get to tap into our loneliness,
yeah,
obviously, but to even be aware and acknowledge that you're lacking more intimacy and close connection, that's so cool. Especially for a man, not to be a, generalist.
yeah. How are you? Just checking in right now. How are you feeling? What kind of thoughts or emotions are you kind of noticing in real time?
What the thoughts I'm having, I'm always better at the thoughts, even though the emotions are right there, as you can see. I can cry at the snap of the fingers, but the thoughts I'm having are sort of, I'm seeing my whole life, and I'm seeing this thing of, wanting, might have to edit out these pauses. I'm trying to get my words, but basically, that I am good enough, that I've had these hard things in my life. I made up stories, not good enough, this, loss, whatever. And what I want is to live in love and connection, like what you said, and not in fear. But I know this is give it F actually, so I'm supposed to sit in the fear a little bit, the fear and the pain and the sadness a little bit. But yeah, like I want the end to really be full out and fully connected, and especially in my current marriage, to not jump to like a fear place or a I'm not good enough place and all of that, to really be open-hearted.
I'm curious how the fear is there to help you. What do you think it's making you aware of? What threat and what desires on the other side of that can sort of guide you to see what's missing, and maybe not being able to manifest it or, make it happen right away. However, at least knowing sort of what you want that is not exactly there, you think?
Well, what came up for me is that the fear is being found out. The fear is divorce from being found out that I'm a POS, piece of shit, failing, dropping balls, not good enough, not being perfect. So the fear is, another failed marriage, and look who's there again, me. And what I want is to not be standing in that place, to be standing beyond, in, sort of like the self-love, self-compassion thing. That's where it starts, right?
Let's say the fear, hypothetically, let's say the fear came true and you ended up separating. What emotions would come up if that actually happened? What would that actually be like, just to name those emotions?
Sadness, pain. If history tells me anything, because my first divorce, even though I knew that it was the right thing, I felt like a failure. So it's sort of the shame, failure type thing. Hopelessness, if that's.
So your fear is making you aware of some deep shit, some deep truth, right? I imagine, just speaking for myself, I imagine if that happened to me, I would have extreme sadness, pain, shame, hopelessness. You probably don't believe that you would have those emotions forever and you would just crawl in a hole and die, right?
Yeah.
You probably know at some level life would go on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could navigate towards what you wanted at that point. So I wanted to just highlight how oftentimes we think we might be afraid of an event from happening, but I wonder if we're really actually afraid of the emotions that we're going to have if something does happen, because nobody wants to be sad and lonely and hopeless. That's awful. But we can become so paralyzed with fear of trying to avoid those painful emotions that we can't maybe make the best decisions. So instead, if we use the fear and the awareness of these emotions that we fear and accept that, yeah, if such and such happens, I'm going to feel a lot of emotional pain. And that's good, because that's what happens when something bad happens. When my best friend passed away, I had excruciatingly sad pain. I couldn't talk. I couldn't stop crying because, you know, he was so young and all of the rest. And when I think about him right now, I get some painful sadness that comes back. And I'm glad that it does, because it's reflective of how much, you know, he meant to me and how much I really valued that relationship. So I just feel like if we can see that all of these emotions and the future emotions that we're afraid of, they're all really trying to help us. They're not just there to make us feel shitty. If that could take away a bit of the emotiophobia, and we can stop trying so hard to kind of control reality, you know?
Yeah, I love that term, emotiophobia. Is that in the book?
It is. It's an original fun term.
Very fun and very true. Very human.
Yeah. Thoughts or feelings now, or any?
I think that my take-home message for today, because I did come today with an intention to have a breakthrough.
Awesome.
Is that this whole thing, and I even have a t-shirt that says it's okay to not be okay, right?
Nice.
And it's this whole tightrope that I walk of like everything, my hippie self, you know, everything's okay. It's all happening as planned in the universe and da da da. And sort of taking a couple steps to the other side and being okay to not be okay, and to really feel and still trust that I'm on my path and everything's happening exactly the way it should, but to really, you know, feel the feelings when they come up, which I do. I mean, come on. I feel my feelings is like a mantra I have, but life gets so busy and hectic and everything, I don't really carve out the space for that. So I think my takeaway from talking to you is to really, when I do feel all the yuck, to sit with it and to use the steps, right? To name it, to ask it what it's trying to tell me, to actually, like, as an act of self-care, to give myself the space and the time to look at my painful emotions with curiosity and to just like embrace them. Like that poem, the Rumi, the guest house poem. You know that one, right?
I don't. Do you want to tell us about it?
Oh, it's so good. I'll send it to you. I think it's called The Guest House. And it just talks about like when any emotion comes to the doorstep, invite it in.
Yeah.
Invite it in. You don't have to like rent it a room and like give it, you know, a bed and breakfast sort of thing. Like, yay, you're here, you know, but definitely invite it into the entryway and talk to it, ask it why it's come, and, you know, welcome it with open arms into your guest house.
I love it. I think the Buddha said when Satan or the devil visits you, pour him a cup of tea. You know,
Awesome.
that radical acceptance stuff is so cool. I want to let everyone know that in real time, I feel so much closer to Brooke right now, because what she did was she was very courageous and simultaneously very vulnerable to share her true, deep, painful emotions with us. And I think where we are deeply wounded and where we have those vulnerable, sacred emotions is where we're also most similar to each other. And so if it's possible to feel more connected and to feel closer to somebody and to sort of celebrate that intimacy, because Brooke was already awesome and really fun to be around, but she became even more real, and she has like so much more depth, and I just automatically care about her even more. And that's what happens when you can just simply make somebody aware of your emotions. And look, it didn't have to take 5 hours, and we didn't have to get into all the ins and outs of the drama and the explanations and the story to really feel closer and to really be able to relate. Like, yeah, I get that, and I can resonate with those emotions, and you're not alone. Like, this is like the human condition, and we can be together with that stuff.
Thank you for saying that. And I'll add that that's why I freaking love WomenStrong, because we're all there sharing our similar experiences, being vulnerable, and we're not alone. And we, it decreases mental health stigma, it just everything. It's just being seen by another human. So thank you, Alex, for having this podcast, having me on, seeing me, creating a safe space. And I do
Brooke
feel close to you too.
Brooke is not only strong, she is WomenStrong. And check out WomenStrong, because it fucking rocks for sure. Any upcoming events besides our hypothetical retreat, which I hope people will get excited about? Anything going on with stuff you're doing, or any other news or announcements?
Well, I would just say that when you become a member of our membership program, we have a monthly coffee and chill the first Tuesday. I don't know. It's in my calendar. It just tells me first Tuesday of every month or something like that. And it is the best, because all of our members and me and Dr. Nicole, we share like what we're up to. Like, we're focusing next month on self-love because of Valentine's Day. So my homework assignment was to do our self-love lesson from the curriculum, which involves writing yourself a love letter. So I'm going to be doing that before our coffee and chill, and then sort of talking to everybody about what I discovered and encouraging everybody else to do that exercise. So, every month is different, but if you want to connect with me and Dr. Nicole and the other members, just sign up for our membership, because once a month we're drinking coffee and chilling.
Nice.
Online.
No men allowed?
No men allowed, sorry.
No men allowed.
And we're also going to be having a summit where some of our experts, which you can learn about on our podcast, we're going to present from each of our modules of the Foundations for Health. So that'll be coming up probably second half of 2023.
And last little mini topic, the final step of radical emotional acceptance is thank the fuck. How can we find sincere gratitude for these emotions? So, Brooke, how can you possibly have sincere gratitude for this painful shame and hate, anger, fear, these really intensely painful emotions that you've shared today? Is it possible to have not fake, but really sincere gratitude from your heart for the stuff that most of us want to get rid of?
I'm thinking, it's what makes me human. But then I took it when you said sincere, authentic, I was like, oh, that's the psychobabble answer. Like, we're all human. We all have these emotions. And then I took it back to my little girl self. Sorry, I'm getting inner child and crying and stuff. But like, I picture myself as my deeply feeling little girl self, and I still have that part in me that's like so sensitive and feels so deeply, and I love that little girl. So I'm thanking just for who I am and like the whole journey of this fucked up life. I think that was the first time I used the F-bomb.
Nice. She saves the best for last, guys. By the way, inner child work stuff is so powerful. And I mean, I got chills just imagining this cute little child version of Brooke, just so innocent and so full of love and hope and desires for, you know, such a bright future. And I can't help but imagine that you're doing like all of that and more for your little girl right now too, your actual little girl.
Oh, thank you. You know, parenting is such a roller coaster. We had the worst school drop off this morning, but I'm going to repair it when she gets home off the bus. So I'm going to talk about this morning and, you know, rewire that little brain of the crap morning. So yeah, it's work in progress, this whole beautiful fucked up journey. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks so much for being on. This is the closest I think that I got to crying on a podcast so far. So thank you for that, Brooke. And I hope you'll be back on again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. This is Dr. Alex Wills with Give a F Actually. Make sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the merch store. RadicalEmotionalAcceptance.com. Bye.
Bye.